This is a mushrooms P. Tampanensis trip report by Ben, posted to arrowhead.org on November 8, 2016. I have used psychedelics before, but never alone. I have taken LSD about 7 times, mushrooms 3 times, and Hawaiian baby woodrose once. Each time I was with friends in a noisy room with people talking. The idea of sitting by myself with only my thoughts and a few pieces of music seemed both attractive and frightening. I wanted to see what would happen when there was no one else to talk to, no one else to laugh with, no one else to keep the conversation going. I also wanted to ask some questions that have been nagging me for a long time. What is the goal of my life? What should I change to be happier? What should I do to be a better person? I thought that a solo trip might give me a clearer view of those questions. A week before the night I planned, I ordered some magic truffles from an online shop. The seller listed the species as Psilocybe pajadaros, but the product page said the common name was Dragon's Dynamite Magic Truffles. I ordered 6 grams of dried truffles. The description said that 6 grams of dried material is roughly equivalent to 15 grams of fresh truffles, and that it would be a strong dose. I had tried taking a half dose and then redosing on other occasions, but it never felt right. The second dose always seemed to come during the come down of the first, and it never gave me the edge I was looking for, so this time I decided to take the whole 6 grams at once. The day of the trip was a Tuesday. I had worked a long week, and I felt tired and a little stressed. I spent the afternoon thinking about whether I should go ahead. My mind kept going back to the questions I wanted to ask. At 7 o'clock in the evening, I made a decision. This would be the night. I turned on my computer and started to build a playlist. I chose a mix of music that I thought would suit different moods. I added a few tracks by Ravi Shankar, some Pink Floyd, a couple of songs by Air, a piece by Pat Metheny, a Jimi Hendrix solo, and a few Grateful Dead numbers. I wanted the music to be there, but I also wanted to be able to turn it off if it became too much. Before I ate the truffles, I did a short breathing exercise. I sat on the floor, crossed my legs, and breathed in slowly through my nose, then out through my mouth. I felt my chest rise and fall, and I tried to let my thoughts settle. I lit a stick of sandalwood incense and let the smoke drift around the room. The scent was warm and earthy, and it seemed to calm the nervous feeling in my stomach. I took the 6 grams of dried truffles out of the bag, placed them on a small plate, and chewed them slowly. The texture was dry and a little crumbly. I swallowed them with a glass of water, hoping the water would help the taste go down. The moment the truffles hit the back of my throat, I felt a wave of nausea. It was sudden, almost like a warning signal. I thought for a moment that I might have poisoned myself. I forced myself to finish the rest of the dose, even though the nausea grew stronger with each bite. When the last piece was gone, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. I turned on the television and put on an episode of The Simpsons. I thought the familiar cartoon would distract me from the nausea and give me something light to watch while I waited for the effects to start. The bright colors and familiar jokes seemed to help at first. I brushed my teeth quickly after that, hoping the mint would clear the aftertaste of the truffles. The toothpaste did help a little. The minty flavor washed away some of the earthy bitterness, but the relief was short-lived. Within a few minutes I felt a tremor in my hands, and a laugh escaped my mouth that was louder and more uncontrollable than usual. I realized that the truffles were already taking hold. I tried to focus on the cartoon, but the characters on the screen began to look strange. Their faces stretched, their eyes grew larger, and the colors seemed to pulse. The bright yellow of the living room walls turned into a deep orange that seemed to breathe. My nausea grew again, this time because the visual distortion was unsettling. I turned the TV off and pressed play on my playlist. The first track was a sitar piece by Ravi Shankar. The strings sang in a way that felt both foreign and familiar. The sound seemed to vibrate through my whole body. I closed my eyes and let the music wash over me. At the same time, I noticed that a painting on the wall, a small abstract piece I had bought years ago, began to shift. The colors in the painting moved very slightly, as if a gentle wind were passing over the canvas. It was a subtle motion, but it was enough to make my heart race. I had never seen a psychedelic effect start so quickly. My thoughts started to feel loose. It became hard to hold a single idea for more than a few seconds. I felt dizzy, as if the room were slowly turning. I got up from the couch and began to walk in circles around the living room. I hoped that the motion would ground me. The circles helped. The feeling of the floor under my shoes, the slight creak of the wooden boards, the cool air from the open window. All of those small details anchored me for a moment. While I was walking, I asked myself why I had decided to do this. Was it a good idea? Was I prepared enough? I felt a flicker of fear. No one else knew what I was doing, and that made the situation feel very alone. At the same time, I found myself laughing at the absurdity of the thought. It was as if I were watching myself from the outside, and that distance made the fear feel less heavy. The music changed to a gentle guitar piece by Pat Metheny. The melody was calm, and it made me feel a sudden urge to move. I started to sway, then to dance a little, as if the rhythm were pulling my body. I imagined myself as a woman dancing in a traditional Indian ceremony, the sitar and tabla guiding my steps. My mind was playing with gender and identity, but the feeling was simply joy. I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I pulled out a notebook that I keep by the couch for moments like this. I began to write, but the words came out in short bursts, every 3 or 4 minutes. My sense of time was already slipping. What felt like a minute might have been 10 minutes or 20. I wrote about the colors, about the music, about the way my thoughts were jumping from one subject to another. I noted that my mood was shifting rapidly from amusement to anxiety to calm, all within a few minutes. I looked at the 2 houseplants on the windowsill. They were a small spider plant and a larger pothos vine. The leaves seemed to breathe, to open and close with the air. I realized that these living things depended on me for water and light. That thought made me feel a small sense of responsibility. I thought that caring for these plants was a tiny act of kindness, a reminder that I am part of a larger network of life. My fatigue began to return. I was already tired before I took the truffles, and the effort of staying awake and aware was draining. I sat down on the couch, letting the music fill the room. My right eye started to move slightly to the left, and I felt a sensation inside the eyeball, as if the muscles were working on their own. I have never experienced this kind of involuntary eye movement on a psychedelic before. I decided not to give it too much importance. The trip was only beginning, and I did not want to get caught up in every little detail. I wrote another note, this time about my habit of worrying too much. I realized that I spend a lot of time asking myself questions, trying to predict outcomes, and that this habit stops me from actually doing things. I decided in that moment that I would try to worry less and act more. The thought felt like a small resolution, but the words were still flowing, and each sentence seemed to open a new direction. I kept telling myself to finish one sentence before moving on, but the urge to chase a new idea was stronger. Later, I thought about how much I compare myself to my friends. I do not like going to bars to meet women. I do not enjoy partying every Saturday. I prefer quiet evenings and reading. Yet I have felt pressure to conform to what others do. The trip made me see that I have the right to live according to my own principles. I told myself that I would listen more to my own inner voice and less to the opinions of others. It felt like a small but important shift. The music swelled into a longer Pink Floyd track. The guitars and synths seemed to fill the entire room, then spill out into the hallway, then into the street outside. I felt a wave of love and compassion that grew with each chord. The feeling was not just an emotion, it was a sense of connection to everything around me. I thought of all the people I have known, all the strangers I have passed on the street, and I felt a deep sense of belonging. The ego that usually keeps me separate seemed to dissolve for a moment. I could not remember the last time I felt so open. I began to repeat the French word for love, murmure, out loud, as if the sound could help me understand it. I said it slowly, feeling each syllable. The word seemed to vibrate in the air. I felt that the meaning of the word was expanding, becoming more than a simple definition. I realized that language can shape how we see each other, that words can create bridges or walls. In that state, I felt that using kind words was a way to keep peace. The room was alive with light. The lamps glowed with colors that seemed to pulse in time with the music. The walls breathed, the floor seemed to pulse under my feet. I felt a sense of awe that was both gentle and overwhelming. My heart beat faster, but not with fear. It beat with a sense of wonder. I felt that I was part of something larger, something that included plants, rocks, and the distant stars that could be seen through the window. At this point, the experience was still rising. I could feel the peak approaching, but I was not yet at the highest point. My thoughts were still moving, still shifting, still exploring. I could sense that the next minutes would bring deeper insights, but I also sensed that I was already learning something important about how I relate to my own mind, to my own body, and to the world around me. I was ready to go further, but I also wanted to stay present for each small detail that was unfolding. The clock on the wall showed a time that I could not trust. I stopped looking at it because the numbers seemed to blur. I kept writing, kept listening, kept moving. My breath was steady, the music was steady, the room was steady, even though everything inside my head felt like a river in flood. I felt a mixture of excitement and calm, as if I were standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to jump, but also feeling the wind on my face and the solid ground beneath my feet. I do not know how long this phase lasted. The minutes felt like seconds, the seconds felt like minutes. I was aware of my own heartbeat, of the rhythm of the music, of the subtle motion of the painting on the wall. I felt that I was moving deeper into the experience, that the early peak was forming, that the sense of love and connection was growing stronger. I felt that the next stage would bring more intense visual patterns, more profound thoughts, and perhaps a feeling of unity that would be difficult to put into words. For now, I remain in this space, watching the colors, listening to the sounds, feeling the gentle pull of the music on my body, and noting the thoughts that arise without trying to control them. I am aware that I am alone, but not lonely. I am aware that the trip is taking me somewhere inside, and that the journey has only just begun. For now, I remain in this space, watching the colors, listening to the sounds, feeling the gentle pull of the music on my body, and noting the thoughts that arise without trying to control them. I am aware that I am alone, but not lonely. I am aware that the trip is taking me somewhere inside, and that the journey has only just begun. The music shifts. A sitar line rises, and the room seems to breathe with it. The walls, which have always been flat, begin to ripple like the surface of a pond after a stone has been dropped. The ripple spreads outward, touching the ceiling, floor, the painting, the plant in the corner. The plant, which I have always thought of as a piece of furniture, now looks like a living being made of light. Its leaves pulse in time with the beat. I feel a strange urge to reach out and touch the leaf, to feel the vibration. My hand moves slowly, and when my fingers meet the leaf, I sense a soft thrum that travels up my arm, through my chest, to my throat. I do not know if this is a sensation of my own body or a projection of the mind, but it feels real. The colors intensify. The red of the painting becomes a flame that flickers. The blue becomes a deep ocean that swallows the edges of the room. The green of the plant becomes a field of grass that stretches beyond the window. I see patterns forming on the surface of the air like tiny spirals that expand and contract. The spirals are not static, they breathe. I watch them for several minutes, and each time they expand, a feeling of openness spreads through me, as if a door inside my chest is being opened wider. My thoughts begin to move faster than my speech. I try to keep up with them by writing in my diary, but the pen moves in jerky strokes, and the words appear as fragments. I notice that the fragments are all about the same theme, connection. I write, "All things are linked, then we are not separate, then love is the thread." The words repeat, and each repetition feels like a mantra that grounds me. The mantra does not calm me in the way a soothing voice would. It simply makes the chaotic flood of images feel more ordered. The sense of love that I felt earlier grows stronger. It is not a sentimental love, but a deep, expansive feeling that seems to include every living thing, every inanimate object, even the concept of time itself. I feel a pull toward the idea that I am part of a larger whole, that my individual concerns are tiny in comparison to the whole. This feeling is accompanied by a physical warmth that spreads from my chest to my limbs, as if my blood has been heated from the inside. My breath becomes slower, deeper, and each inhale feels like I am drawing in the whole room, each exhale like I am releasing it back. I begin to notice that the music is no longer separate from the visual field. The notes of the sitar become visible as thin ribbons of light that travel across the room, touching the walls and the plant, then fading. When a drum beats, a pulse of color radiates outward. The rhythm of the drums seems to set the pace for the visual patterns. I find myself moving in time with the beats, swaying gently, my body aligning with the invisible currents. My mind registers this as a dance, even though I am not moving my feet. It feels as if my entire being is dancing with the universe. At this point, the peak of the experience is fully present. The intensity of the visuals is at its highest, the sense of unity is at its strongest, and the emotional wave is at its most powerful. I feel no fear. I feel a calm certainty that this is exactly where I need to be. The thoughts that arise are not questions, but statements. I see my life as a series of choices that have led me to this moment. I see the moments when I have avoided discomfort, when I have chosen safety over growth, and I understand that those choices have built the walls that I now see crumbling. The walls are not literal. They are the mental barriers that separate me from the sense of oneness I feel now. The music changes again. A guitar riff from a song I recognize as Jimi Hendrix enters, and the room takes on a new texture. The colors shift to a deep violet, and the spirals become more defined, like mandalas that open and close. I feel a sense of curiosity about the purpose of my life. The question that has haunted me for years, what is the goal of my life, appears not as a question but as a clear image. I am standing on a hill, looking over a valley where people are helping each other, sharing food, building shelters. The image is not a fantasy, it feels like a memory of something that could happen. I feel a strong desire to be part of that scene, to contribute to that sense of community. The feeling of love does not fade, but it becomes steadier, like a river that has found its course. The initial rush of euphoria settles into a deep, warm glow. I notice that my heart is beating in a steady rhythm, and each beat seems to echo the drum in the music. My breathing is now synchronized with the music, and my mind is no longer racing. It is simply observing. I notice that my thoughts are now like clouds drifting across a sky. They appear, they move, they dissolve. I do not need to chase them. I watch them with a gentle interest. Time loses its grip. Minutes feel like hours, but I do not feel impatient. I am content to sit in this plateau, to let the experience unfold at its own pace. The music continues, moving through different genres, each one bringing a new shade to the visual field. A soft electronic beat from air brings a cool blue hue, and the room feels like a night sky full of stars. I see each star as a point of consciousness, each one connected by thin lines of light. I feel a sense of responsibility toward those points, as if I could reach out and help them shine brighter. My mind begins to turn inward, examining the patterns of my own behavior. I see a loop where I often avoid conflict, where I suppress anger, where I hide my true feelings to maintain peace. The loop appears as a tangled knot of rope. I watch the knot tighten and then loosen as the music shifts. When a gentle piano melody begins, the knot loosens, and I feel a release of tension in my shoulders. I realize that I have been holding on to anger, not because I am angry at others, but because I am angry at myself for not being honest. The realization brings a small tear to my eye, and the tear falls onto the page of my diary, leaving a dark spot that looks like a tiny galaxy. The love that surrounds me now includes a sense of compassion for my own imperfections. I understand that the love I feel for others must also be directed inward. I repeat silently, I am enough, and the phrase feels like a warm hand on my back. The phrase repeats itself in the music, as if the guitar is playing the same notes that my mind is chanting. The plateau continues for a long while. The music eventually fades into a soft ambient sound, like wind through trees. The colors become muted, like the afterglow of a sunset. I feel my body becoming heavy, as if gravity is pulling me back down. My stomach rumbles, reminding me that I have not eaten since before the trip. The physical sensations of hunger begin to surface, grounding me back to the body. I notice that the room is still, but the visual patterns are now slow and subtle. The plant leaves still pulse, but at a slower rate. The walls are still, but the faint ripple remains, like a memory of a wave. My mind is calm, and the thoughts are gentle. I think about the questions that brought me here. What is the goal of my life? What should I change to be happier? What should I do to be a better person? The answers are not delivered as grand revelations, but as small, practical insights. I see that I need to set aside time each day for quiet reflection, that I need to speak more honestly with friends, that I need to let go of the need to please everyone. I also see that I need to care for the plants in my home, to water them regularly, to notice their growth, because they remind me that life is a process of continual unfolding. The music stops completely, and silence fills the room. The silence is not empty. It feels like a soft blanket that covers everything. In this silence, I hear my own breath more clearly. I feel the air moving in and out of my nostrils. I feel my heart beating. I feel my feet on the floor, the weight of my body against the couch. I feel the texture of the blanket on my lap. The physical world reasserts itself, and I am grateful for the return of these simple sensations. The come down begins. The intense colors fade to a neutral palette. The warmth in my chest cools to a comfortable temperature. My muscles, which have been relaxed for a long time, begin to feel a slight ache, as if they have been holding a position for too long. My stomach growls louder, demanding food. I open my eyes fully and see the room as it truly is. The couch, the painting, the plant, the diary on the coffee table. The TV screen is dark. The incense has burned down to a small pile of ash. The air smells faintly of sandalwood and the lingering scent of the truffles. I stand slowly, feeling a little unsteady, as if my legs are still a bit heavy. I walk to the kitchen, and the floor feels cool under my bare feet. I open the fridge, take out a piece of cheese and some crackers, and sit at the table. The act of eating feels very grounding. Each bite is a reminder that my body is still alive, that I am still here. The taste of the cheese is rich, and I notice the texture more than I ever have before. I chew slowly, savoring each mouthful. The food seems to bring back energy, and my mind becomes clearer. After I finish eating, I pour a beer, sit back on the couch, and light another incense stick. I take a few slow breaths, feeling the smoke curl around me. I notice that my mind is still slightly foggy, but the fog is thinning. I think about the love I felt earlier, and I realize that love is not a fleeting emotion. It is a practice. It is a decision to see others as part of oneself, to act with kindness, to speak with care. I also noticed that the anger I felt for a brief moment was a signal that I have not fully processed my own frustration with myself. I resolved to give myself permission to feel that frustration without judging it. The after effects settle in over the next hour. My body feels a little sore in the lower back, as if I have been sitting in a twisted position. My eyes are a little dry, but the colors of the room are no longer overwhelming. I feel a gentle fatigue, the kind that comes after a long walk. My mind is still active, but it is no longer racing. It is like a river that has slowed after a rapid stretch. I find myself thinking about the next steps in my life. I decide that I will schedule a regular yoga practice, at least 3 times a week, to keep the sense of body awareness that helped me during the trip. I decide that I will write down my thoughts each morning to keep the clarity I felt in the plateau. I decide that I will call a close friend tomorrow and share some of the insights, because I realize that sharing can deepen the understanding. I also notice that I am more attentive to the small things. The way the light from the street lamp outside filters through the curtains, the sound of the refrigerator humming, the subtle scent of the incense. These details, which I would normally ignore, now feel important. I think that perhaps part of the purpose of the trip was to bring my attention back to the present moment, to remind me that life is made up of these tiny moments. Later in the night, after the beer is finished and the incense has burned down, I sit at the desk and write in my diary again. I write about the love that filled me, about the feeling of being connected to everything, about the insight that I am part of a larger family that includes plants, rocks, and other people. I write about the practical steps I will take: yoga, journaling, honest conversation. I write about the need to be kinder with my own expectations. I write about the fact that I felt both love and a brief flash of anger, and that both are valid parts of the human experience. I write slowly, allowing each sentence to settle before moving on. The writing process feels like a bridge between the experience and the everyday world. It helps me to translate the sensations into words that I can keep and refer to later. I notice that the act of writing also slows my breathing, and my heart rate returns to a normal rhythm.